We're here with Craig Rodsmith on the Mama Tried to Flat Out Friday podcast.
Welcome, Craig.
Craig, it's
Thanks,
great
Warren.
to have you.
Thanks, Scott.
So, we'll start at the beginning for those who are unfamiliar with your work and like your fabrication and the things that you build. But so, you're Australian,
Mm-hmm.
And you moved to the States.
Yeah, I was bred in Australia, but I'm just a crumb here. It's an old joke. It's like, no one's good with it. Yeah, I was born in Melbourne, Australia, in the early '60s, and I come over here to visit and just like the lifestyle here.
When did you come over for the first time?
Yeah, and how was that?
I first came here in, I think, '88, '89, and I'd buy Harleys over here, because at the time, Harleys were so expensive in Australia.
How old were you?
I was in my 20s.
So you already had a business model going in Australia. You're coming over here to procure
Yeah, it wasn't so much that I had a business, and I still don't have a business model or anything.
some
It was just-
some direction.
Yeah, it was more, I'll take some money, come over here and buy 4, 5, 6 bikes, Harleys, take them back to Australia, and I could sell them, just fix, not going crazy with them. Just
So you fund your
sell them.
vacation and your life
Right.
by
And
flipping
to travel.
bikes.
And then I'd come over here, and I've traveled. There's only 2 states I haven't been to in America. There's Maine and Alaska, and it's like I just love to see the country.
Sure.
Meet the people. That's what I found interesting. Is like different regions of this country, people are incredibly different.
How did you? So when you came over in '80, whatever, for your first time, how many times back did it take for you to just say, "Fuck it, I'm staying"?
Well, I never did that. I actually got to a point. I met a woman, and got married, and had kids.
And that's how you ended up in the Chicago area?
That just what ended up happening.
Right.
Well, I had a friend years ago, I think it was the second time I come over here, and I met this guy. He always had such a long flight, you look for someone to hang out with on the plane and get drunk with.
Smoke.
Yeah, in those days you could smoke and drink. And it was great. Qantas in those days, they just basically give you the bottle. They don't bother us. Like there'd be groups of people in the middle of the aisle, like the good old days. You'd just be drunk, and the flight's so long, you get drunk and sober up 3 times.
Right.
And smoking cigarettes, and I miss the good old days. But anyway, I flew out of Melbourne, and I had to stop. Then flew out of Sydney, and I saw this guy bar at the airport. I know he was on my flight. I'm like, oh, he's an Australian guy. It's someone to hang out with, drink with on the way. And he's another American guy. He thought I was American. We ended up becoming really good friends. And he lived up in the Midwest, in Chicago. He lived in Barrington Hills, farming family. It was ironic. We met, and he'd been living in Melbourne for 6 months. And he started saying, "Oh, you're from Melbourne. Do you know such and such?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know." "Oh, he's married to this." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I went to high school with her." He'd been living, for the most part, 3 streets away from where I live, and we met in Sydney. And it was like,
That's awesome.
so then I come over here, and I was going to Houston. He was coming back to Chicago area, and I bought a car in Houston. I bought a '78 C28 Camaro. And I thought, fuck it, I'll go see something. I drove through all the deep south. And I'll come up and visit my new friend, Mike, and then end up meeting his family, become close to his family.
Where was he at?
Barrington Hills.
That's what Barrington Hills.
Old farming family,
Yeah.
not rich Barrington Hills.
Sure.
And we're still friends. And then he'd come back to Australia, he stayed with me, and then I'd come over here, and then I ended up come back, and I started working as a mechanic and driving trucks for a guy who drove dump trucks. And I met a woman, got married, had kids, and got divorced. Now I'm happy.
Wait, what kind of bikes were you riding at the time?
Mainly Harleys.
Yeah.
It was a lot of my life, like I used to road race. I road race RDs, and then I moved on to TZs. I raced TZ 350s for a couple of years, and then I got bitten by the Harley bug in my late 20s, I guess. And
What kind?
well, my first Harley was a 45 flathead from WL.
All right.
And
chopper, bobber, stocker,
No,
whatever?
I got it. It was kind of a bobber when I got it, and I turned it back to pretty stock. But I used to ride to work every day in Melbourne, and so I upgraded. I put a magneto on it and a disc brake on the front. That was about it. Otherwise, it was a pretty stock bike.
Mm-hmm.
It was still rocker clutch, hand shift.
Yeah.
And riding that to work each day.
Oh, great.
I got so adept at it because I still had the advanced retard on the magneto. I had all that and things. I had a friend of mine had an SS 900 Ducati. I could beat him into the city on the 45.
Really?
Yeah. Well, because the brakes sucked. I couldn't slow down. It's like, it wasn't really intentional. It's like, holy shit. But it was, then I got into, I had a few Triumph choppers, bobbers, and then more Harleys, and I enjoyed the Harley thing. And then later on, I'd always liked Italian stuff. I had Italian cars, Fiats, and some Alfa Romeos. I had some Ducatis too at the time. Then I started, actually more recently, when I moved to the States, I got into Motor Guzzies. And I think the thing that I liked about Motor Guzzi, and still like about it, and I think a lot of people that are into it, it's almost like a cult following. It's the history of Motor Guzzi, and the story of it is just, because they're not that fast. I've made some fast ones, but
Yeah.
it ends up becoming really expensive to do. So,
Yeah.
But it's interesting, it's like even recently I did some work, I built an Harley Ironhead Cafe Racer, which I built a couple of those. And, I didn't know you were a Harley guy. I'm like, a motorcycle guy. I didn't know there was I'm sure you guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like you two come from different backgrounds, and you're
Yeah.
probably finding a fascination with,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa.
Yeah.
Because I know you're getting into,
Yeah.
you're starting to enjoy
People see the Kawasaki on there, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, having fun. What do you mean?
Right. And I think it's interesting with this because, especially when you're building stuff and working on stuff, I know how I am. I like to go outside of the box and outside of my comfort zone. And it's like, do something. I don't want to just keep doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I got
Yeah.
into, the last few years. And I had, back in Australia, actually, I had a Z1000, or Z1000 as we call it, with a turbo on it. And it was just ridiculous.
The stock, wouldn't it? Didn't they make those stock?
No, I think, no, I don't. I don't
Honda
think
had one.
Z1000. Yeah, Honda. There was a CX 650 turbo, and then I think there might have been a Kawasaki. I can't remember.
So besides the motorcycles, you have a music background, and how'd you get into the music touring thing in the States? If you're
Well, what it was when in Australia, I was a product of the 70s, and I remember punk rock sort of. I grew up in a very working class neighborhood, and I always remember it was interesting because where I grew up, everyone was trying to look like they had money, and they weren't listening to Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, and trying to look cool. And then I started hanging out the other side of the river in Melbourne, which is a little bit more affluent. And all those people that had money, they were into punk rock and Defiance, and they would dress. And I'll never forget, I was at a club in the 70s, a punk rock sort of club. And there's this girl there, she had the safety pins and the ribbon stockings and the whole 9 yards and braces on her teeth. And I'm like, that's kind of an oxymoron. It's like, I don't give a fuck, but I want straight teeth. But there was something about that, and I remember in '77 I bought the first Clash album, and I heard this song Janie Jones, which is still to this day my favourite song ever. And I know there was something about it that spoke to me, and then I used to play bass, and some guys in the neighbourhood, we get in a band together, and they were more into Kiss and AC/DC, and we couldn't find a drummer. I'm like, well, I'll play drums. And I sort of taught myself to play drums. And that was it. I sucked at bass playing anyway. So I wasn't that good for drummer. I was a good timekeeper. And music's always
What kind of stuff did you play?
you don't strike me as a bass player either, bro. Like,
Yeah.
Nah, I'm too
No.
stupid. Bass players are very, kind of esoteric. And
yeah,
Yeah.
always on the edge of
it's like...
probably shouldn't be in a rock
Bill
and roll
Wyman,
band, but
Yeah.
Bill Wyman, that sort of, yeah.
Vibe.
Yeah, I was my big fan, music fans at the time, like Keith Moon was from
yeah, you have like
And it wasn't said that it was a good, it was, I'll never forget, I was looking at a band once and I put an ad in the paper, punk rock drummer looking for a job. Mad as Meat Axe. And that was, and I ended up joining a few bands.
Did you have like an animal vibe when you're playing, like from the Muppets?
A little bit.
Or are you a little guy keeping them down?
No, I might have been a little wild. I think not crazy, but
Yeah.
I've just got a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Just even still do, I think. And it was just.
And were you playing music when you moved to the States? Like when you're...
No, I hadn't played for a few years, and then I ended up where I live. Met a guy named Ike Riley, and he's a singer-songwriter, and critically acclaimed. He's great, and we became really good friends. And I never forget when we first met. Oh yeah, I'm a Clash fan. Oh really? So you ever seen them live? No. Oh, what was the first album? Sandinista. You're not a Clash fan. And you're from Libertyville. And I just gave him shit about it. And we ended up really good friends. And then I became his tour manager then, because I drove the bass and, I could fix the bass. And I was also the guitar tech and drum tech, and I could take care of everything. And I toured with him for 12 years. And it was good because what I was doing in my shop, we'd only go out for 6 weeks or so. He kind of paid me enough to pay my bills in my shop, and it was what a life.
Good balance.
And it was another way, to get to see more of America. And it was like, I've been to basically every major city and probably every minor city in America. I meet people like, oh, where are you from? I wouldn't have heard of it. It's St. Lawrence, Kansas. Oh yeah, I'm in there. And it's like, it's one thing that I found, a lot of Americans haven't seen the country.
Right. It's true.
And
That's
it's,
very true.
But a lot of Americans, if they have travelled, they've gone overseas and more than see their own country. And one thing I tell Americans is, it's in because I left Australia, and I've travelled all over my own country, and there's things I didn't realise that I'd miss until I left.
Yeah.
And it's like, and things that I'm proud of, just love about my country. I think, if I go to Dubai, Americans see your country. It's like.
Right. What are the things you miss about Australia?
Vegemite. Like I can order it online, but the one thing that I miss is a weird thing. Is like fish and chips, like Melbourne fish and chips, not Sydney fish and chips or Brisbane. Like Melbourne, there's something about it. There's this smell and this taste, and it's like I miss it. I remember when I went home last time, my daughter picked me up, and I don't think we even made it home. Like we went stop at the fish and chip shop, and I just got a bunch of fish and chips and potato cakes and stuff. It's something I miss.
That's awesome.
And it's a weird thing, but it's not so much. It's the smell and the memory. It's and the culture. And it's there's a lot of things. I miss my family, all my family, except I have 3 children here. All my family's in Australia, and I miss them a lot. I haven't had. That's the other thing. It's like things that you don't realise. Christmas is not a big deal to me, but I miss being with my family at Christmas time. It's, I tend to that's rough. So,
Right.
So I try and, denial. It's like I go to my shop. You want to come over? I'll play. Friends invite me over. You come. Like, no, I like just being in my shop. I go there and cry and shit.
Yeah. So did how soon after you kind of got the family started, you set up, did you always have a shop where you were
as a kid,
Chicago area?
I do, in Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I first came here, I had a little shop in an alley in Grace Lake, a little shithole, but I was doing stuff. And
Yeah. What kind of stuff were you
I was doing some car stuff and some bike stuff, like I just buy old, I didn't have a lot of money. So,
Yeah.
I go to garage sales and buy old Hondas or whatever I get my hands on and just make stuff and go to the scrapyard and get materials and even my tools and my equipment. Well, it was difficult, but I loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
It was great. Then the shop I'm in now, I've been in for 26 years, I think. I've been there for a long time.
Okay.
And, but it was, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 years ago, I was building cafe races or building some bobbers or doing this and loving it. And there was one bike that I'd always loved, dustbin fed, 50s GP bikes. There was just something so ludicrous about them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, for 20 something years, I want build a dustbin. So by this point, I was almost broke. And I'm like, now's the time to do this. And it's like, I did it, like I would horse trade for and it was a dustbin. I had to do it with a motor guzzi engine.
Yeah.
I did it with a early loop frame that I modified a lot, made this big dustbin fairing. And a lot of people came to the shop and like, the fuck is that? Well, it's a dustbin faired motor guzzi. It's stupid. Like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And then it's when I think this was like an epiphany for me. Because then, even though everyone was telling me how ridiculous it was getting everyone's attention.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And I didn't care about the attention, but at the same time, it's like, well, I got to do something if I want this business to work.
Right.
And I think I'd just gotten a smartphone. And so I went on and was like, oh, you should get it on Instagram. I'm like, okay. A friend of mine, Dave's like, hey, why don't we start making these videos as you build the bike, like from start to finish? Like, whatever. He's like, well, you can. I said, look, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to beat myself. You know, I'm not going to. So in that typical Australian fashion, I guess, there's a lot of swearing and self-deprecation, which is typical of our culture. It's like, oh, Jesus, that was dumb, sort of stuff. And well, then people started getting interested in, and this is one thing that I never wanted to do. I never wanted anyone to be interested in me as much as my work, because that's the most important thing. But then it worked out, it's like, well, I'm being this, you know. It's amazing, as an Australian, you get away with a lot of swearing. And it's like, oh, that's so cute. And so I'm like, oh, I can use this to my advantage, sort of thing. It's like it's a good vehicle in a way, get people to notice my work,
Mm-hmm.
which happened. And I finished building that bike and took it to a show in Austin, and you know, wealthy guy became my best friend, bought it off me, Bobby, and then we continued. He loved my work and the shiny thing. And it's interesting, it's like, I've always been a fabricator, and I'm actually a machinist by trade. I did my apprenticeship. And I've worked as a mechanic most of my life, but I love shaping metal. And I think what I enjoy about the metal shaping, which is, like I said, it's ironic, I think I've become known more for that.
Yeah.
And
Because it's more like,
it's
it's
more
like a
in your face.
mystical. It's a
Yeah,
mystical
exactly.
thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
a magic, some kind of black magic taste.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it gets back to the point. It's like what I like about having worked as a machinist and a mechanic is like with that, you know, you can still be somewhat artistic with it, but it's like part A goes with part B. This is this many millimeters or this many whatever with machining. Whereas shaping metal is just, it's whatever you want it to be.
How many sheets are in the?
I was
in that
going to say,
dustbin?
yeah, I had
Is
a,
it-
I had a
is it-
technical question about
Is
that
it two
too.
sides? Is it four? Is it
Yeah,
like
The
how
constant
do you-
dustbin, that's
material.
basically 4 pieces. There's
And
two
it's-
major side, the big front piece, then I added.
So
the
it's like
upper
a
piece.
it's a front piece like this, so it's straight, and then you.
Yeah, the front curved part,
Yeah.
and then the sides sort of welded to that, and then you know.
How did you work it once it was big like that? Like how do you? That's a.
Yeah, it gets to be a bit of a handball pulling through the wheel and stuff, and I like to do things very traditionally. Like you can get, you know, it's weird. Like I've got a shrinker stretcher, and I don't use it because I feel like I'm hurting the metal. And it's like, but it's one thing that you know, over the years I got a lot of friends that shape metal, and you know, I'd read about it, and it's interesting. The history of it's very interesting, and it's the way I do it is probably more European, Italian. There's all like the English do it slightly different, but that's the thing about metal shaping. There's no real right or wrong way,
Okay.
as long as you end up with the results you want. And it's interesting. I suggest you should start reading about how a lot of those early Ferrari bodies and like a lot of those things hammered out in an oak log and
Yeah.
finished. It's like it's some cool shit, and it's like it was coach building.
Yeah, because when I
That's
first went to your shop, it's rudimentary, right? Like you were doing some wild shit on a I-beam.
Yeah,
You know, there weren't many advanced tools in there. I think you have quite a few now that.
right.
Like, how do you feel that transition has been for you? You know, there's a pride thing, right? Like, oh, I could do the same shit with back then
Right.
that I'm doing now. Like, where's your head at there?
Well, the thing is, when you start getting, you know, as I, you know, with a little bit more money, I could buy something, you know. Oh, then I got an English wheel. I could buy more dollies. So a lot of my stuff is all English wheel, hammer, shot bag, mallets, hammers, dolly, and I like that. It's like massaging the metal and bringing it out rather than this. It's not very efficient, but I like it. I did get some better tools to not only make it more efficient, but it could expand the scope of what I was doing. So that you can actually do a lot more with more tools. And I'm very fortunate. Like I used to just have this cheap, when I used to weld aluminum, it was with torch welding, which is tricky. It's kind of a dying art. It's not a bad way to work aluminum because when you torch weld, you usually get less pinholes and the metal stays so you can shape the weld still. Whereas TIGging is work hardened area, so it's a little bit, there's pros and cons to both. And I grew up welding like a lot, stick weld and weld with a torch, steel brazing, all that sort of stuff. And I haven't been TIG welding that long, and I just bought a cheap, a couple $100 Chinese TIG welder and taught myself to TIG weld. And what I learned was the TIG was so much, like the learning curve was easy, because the TIG is basically just a torch, gas torch, but it's electric instead of gas. And it was like, so it was easy. And then ironically, I can weld aluminum better than I can weld steel or stainless.
Really?
It's like, because I guess predominantly I've
spent so much time doing
so much with aluminum, and it's like the flow. And a lot of people think it's more difficult.
There's certain aspects of it that are more difficult once you figure out
things. Like big thing with welding aluminum is cleanliness. It's got to be immaculately clean, and then your window, the heat. You've only got this small window.
Yeah, you can't let
between not welding and now it's a puddle on the ground or on your knee. And it's like
it's like a race, and it's like a race, right? Like you just have to. It's timing and to get it to flow right. It's like soldering, where you get to a certain point, you can't do it anymore. You got to start over, right? You just fucking grind it down.
Well, you've got a welding background, so you weld much aluminum.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
I do too.
There's something about the flow of it, and it's like
it's so much lighter, and like the puddle feels lighter and more nimble, and you can
kind of play with it more.
Except you're right. There's a line. Like if you get off that line, if you're not put together enough to just realize that you're off the line and stop, it's fucking mess. You get that bullheaded ass like fuck you owned it. The puddle's going everywhere in the hole. It's just getting.
I'll never forget. I was welding. Now I'm lucky enough. I have a really nice Miller. Miller's sponsor me and give me some. Really
you've got the really nice. What's the?
Yeah, I've got a
Dynasty.
Dynasty 280, and
I've never even used one of those.
Oh God, it's nice. It's like I'm so spoiled now, and they give me the latest helmet and shit. I started using my old helmet. The battery went dead in a new one. I'm like, oh my God, how can I weld with this? I'm like. It's a great helmet, but I'm spoiled with it.
I need you to make that connection for me.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Jim's a really good guy.
Are you working for Miller Direct, or are you like a local shop?
No, Miller Direct.
Awesome.
I got the Midwest guy named Jim Maynard, really nice guy, and we've become pretty good friends, and he really looks after me. And I've got a plasma cutter, and they've given me additional things.
Do you have a little table yet? A plasma table or an arc, like one of those arc droids, or?
No, I couldn't justify having something, like I wouldn't use it enough.
Sure.
And I kind of like freehanding and doing that sort of stuff. But, the plasma cutter and all these things, it just makes it more efficient. You can do a better job. And, it's some good shit.
Tools are cool.
Oh, yeah. That's why I drive a $250 car. It's like I drive a shitbox for all my bag. But I have no problem with spending 10 grand on the lathe. No, this makes sense.
Yeah.
I can do more with this.
Yeah.
It's funny, I read I didn't read, a friend of mine was telling me about it. He read this article, The Most Efficient Way. Was I right? Because him and I had been talking about this, and he was telling me the other day, he read this article about the most efficient way to drive a car and get a car. He's like, buy a $200 to $500 car. Don't worry about the sounds, the noises, like just drive it. When it dies, throw it away. Buy another $200 to $500 car. And I've been doing that for years. And it's like, and I worked at Volvos because they're virtually indestructible. And I just drive these. My 740 wagon I've been driving since it finally threw a rod. Since 2008.
Oh, wow.
Had like 500,000 miles on it.
Wow.
And it's funny, like the shoemaker's kids never have shoes. Like I changed the oil. It wasn't miles, it was years.
Sure.
Oh, it's 2 years, might as well change the oil.
Right.
Like, but the thing is, it didn't throw a rod, it spun a bearing. Like it was.
Got hot.
And I was at my buddy Joe's shop in North Chicago. Drove it all the way, it still runs. It's just loud, it sounds like a diesel.
Sure.
It's like it's done, it's toast. And I still haven't scrapped it because I feel it's like an
to
old
it.
friend.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm like, it's like taking the old horse out. It's like, oh, I feel sorry for it.
Well, it's going to become something else. It's
Yeah.
going to be your soda can or your whatever.
Right. And I'll have to do something with it soon. And so I'm just dreading the day.
Yeah. Well, it's going back to the shaping aluminum thing, because like I don't know how to do it, and it seems like a black art to me. It probably does to a lot of people.
Right.
But something interesting that you said like a couple of days ago, you're like, you can teach yourself anything if
Right.
you're ready to put in the time and the effort to like.
What was the analogy? It
Well, the
was,
thing is, a lot of people say, "Oh, wow, you're so talented," and then you start thinking about it. I tend to overthink everything, and it's like, what actually is talent? In my opinion, I wasn't born being able to do this, and it's like, it's just that I was passionate about it, and I had the patience or the drive, the ambition, whatever you want, determination to do that. I'm a very determined person, and I'm going to learn how to do this. And I think it's the same applies to, maybe you have a certain propensity for it, but or an aptitude, but it's like, it's what you're passionate about,
Right.
and what you want to do. And so if I want to be a great guitarist, I'm sure if I put in the same amount of time with that, I'd be a good guitarist.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of the definition of talent. I don't think you're necessarily born with this ability.
yeah, it's so prevalent now with everything being at your fingertips that everybody wants everything now.
Right.
They want to be good at everything. They want to
It's instant
skip the line.
gratification.
And
Well,
be.
that's a product of the information age, because I'm sure you remember this. We're close to the same age. It's like, if you want to know something, when we're kids, you go to the library and get a book and read it, or an encyclopedia, and that was part of the whole process.
Go
It's like
find
now with
somebody
a
to teach you.
smartphone, it's
Yeah.
like, a funny story. It's like, there's this guy who made a time machine and goes back in time. He's back in the 40s. And it's like, wow, what's it like in 2022? It's like, oh, we have flying cars, no flying cars. He says, I have this device here, smartphone. I can access every bit of information throughout the history of the world. He's like, wow, what do you do with that? Post pictures of what I have for breakfast and cats. And it's like, and it's kind of true. And it's like, I'm
Yeah.
guilty of this. It's like, fucking load. And it's
Yeah.
like, this took me 10 seconds for this, all this information to give me. And it's like, and I'm like, hang on. 20 years ago, I had to go to the library, get a book, and look at it and check it
And
out.
it was
and
incomplete
and it was a whole
information.
different thing.
Yeah.
So we've got to remember, and there's all these people that are naysayers of technology, which I think is kind of ridiculous. I think it was Carl Sagan said, the problem with mankind is we don't evolve as humans as quick as our technology does. So we're always trying to catch up with that. But I think it's great that we can have this information, but I guess the point that I was making is, if you think about technology, man's first technology was fire. And like, when we discovered fire, or how to make a fire, it's like, oh my God, everyone's going to get burnt. Or, oh, this is great, we can cook our food and not freeze to death.
Yeah.
So it's how
Perspective.
and then the next major thing was the wheel.
Mhm.
Oh my God, the car is going to run over me and kill me. I'm having a heart attack. This can get me to the hospital quicker. So it's how you apply it,
Right.
what you do with it. You sit in your shop and it's like, oh, I wonder if it's like, growing up, I knew tapping drill sizes. Oh,
Yeah.
1/4 UNF. It's like, oh, and then you get mad. Because, oh my God, it took me 30
I know,
seconds
it's so,
to
and
get that
it's
information.
like your patience and it's fleeting, and then you start adding kids into the mix and trying to figure out how to get them out of that, but
Right.
embrace it as well. Like, just like you're saying, how do you manage that situation and make sure that they benefit from the technology advancements that we didn't, however, still have a little bit of understanding of how we got to
Right.
where we're at.
Well, I think that's the thing that we've got to remember is, as I say, social media is, basically antisocial.
Yeah.
But you've got to think of it this way too. Like you guys put on this show, how do people know about this show that they come to through social media? So it gets back to how do you use this technology if you use it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a place for all of it. And the other thing I believe is I've learned so much from my kids because they've grown up with social media, the internet and all these things. They're like, oh, Dad, just do this. And it's like the same as I teach my children.
Why, Craig, why did you help me when I came to you with that car or truck?
Because we were like-minded. It was like, because we both wanted to get it done.
Why did you want to get it done for
What
me?
truck?
Like,
The 28.
Yeah, 28 Ford Custom, I guess, would like.
Yeah. And a V8, 3-speed, flatted V8.
Yeah. Banjo rear end, wide 5 wheels. Yeah. It was cool.
It was cool. And I could see what you guys were doing and you were into it. And it wasn't, why I knew you guys weren't trying to take advantage of me. It was just, no, I'd known your dad for a while. I got to know you. I knew where you were coming from and what you wanted to do. And it's like, yeah.
I appreciate that and thank you for that because that kind of put me into, it was like because that was really early when I was trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do. And
it's got to be like 15 years ago.
More than that. Yeah, because I've been in Milwaukee for 16, 17 years. It's probably 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm learning how to. That's probably the biggest thing I did outside of my world, where I went to somebody else, other folks, and was learning to, work with other people outside of my world. Right. So like I'm navigating the social aspect of one, asking somebody to help me on a pretty serious project, in order to.
Right. The thing is, I've been doing this for so long. I did this in Australia, and I've done it here for years. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can pick just out of experience with people doing this. And it's like, I've had occasions where people had one guy came to my shop. I just do repair work to make money in cars, bikes, whatever. And he came to my shop, and his car was having electrical problems, and I messed around with it for an hour, and I figured it was the ground clamp for the battery. I just thought, so I replaced the terminal post on the thing. I said, hey, your car's good. And him and his dad came back. And I'm like, hey, what do we owe you? I'm like, give me $30. And the dad's like, $30 for a terminal post? I'm like, I spent an hour working out what the problem was. It's like, $30. It's like, that's a $5. I'm like, you're not paying me for the thing. And I'm like, hang on a sec. So I took the terminal off. I'm looking at it, and then I threw it. I'm like, you don't owe me shit now. How are we going to get home? I don't know.
Some people have no idea.
And it's like that, like, it's $30. Like, who cares? But it's like, and you come with this massive project. I'm like, this is going to be fun. And we just got into it. And then, look, our friendship, 20 years later, we're still.
I didn't realize you guys know each other back in those days.
Yeah, we know each other. Well, because I knew his dad. I was buying parts off his dad. I was figuring it out. I've still got my 76 Electroglide. I still own it. It's the first bike I built when I came to America. I built that 28 years ago. And I was buying parts off your dad when I was building that. So.
Mm-hmm. Is it still, what's it look like these days? Is it still black and lowered? And
yeah. With the round tube swing arm on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got raking cups. And, why it's just putting that, I got a magneto on it now.
Yeah.
And what else did I do? I got an SS Eliminator. I like it when shit hangs out stupidly. It's like, that looks dumb. I'm going with that. It's got the long man with the big SU.
Well, I just appreciate it, and I'll pay it forward, right? Like in that situation when, and not just to you, but to, I want to put that energy out, right? Like when people come and need help.
I completely agree with that. It's that's one thing I decided to do. I don't know, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 years ago, was just eradicate all negative people and negative things out of your life, and it's amazing how much it'll change your life.
Yeah.
Right.
And it just, it's bullshit in, bullshit out.
Sure.
Mentality. It's
Yeah.
like,
It's hard.
you
You
reap
get,
what you sow, sort of thing.
right. You get busier and busier with things, and you just have to find
Right.
a time or balance, or maybe it's not as labor intensive of help. It's just answering questions or text messages or
Right.
pointing in directions or reconnecting, and if it really comes down to it and there's we just can't work it out, then we schedule
Right.
time. So it's a balance. You just have to be realistic about the
Right.
situations and honest and forthright,
Right.
and things tend to work themselves out.
I think what it's interesting, I know quite a few other builders and all the varying attitudes, and how so many people I'm older and I've been doing this longer, and I'm not saying I know, it's just more experience. That's all. And some people you make a suggestion, or they'll ask you, and it's like, well, yeah, I knew that. I'm like,
Sure.
Why'd you fucking ask me? You didn't
Yeah.
know
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, those people haven't become really that good at what they do.
Well, because they're stuck being prideful, right? Like they're
Right.
not open enough to learn and realize that you don't know everything.
Well, it's the same thing with me. I mean, a lot of there's so much more modern technology and new stuff. Like now with fuel injection, it's like scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
And it's like I'll ask these younger people, like, "Hey, how does this work?"
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And that gets back to what I was saying. We can all learn. You learn from your kids. You can learn from your grandfather, sort of thing.
Being humble.
And it's you think of Max Hazen, and we learn a lot of each other because he was like, "Hey, how's this work?" I'm like, "I don't know." Or, "Hey, yeah, I know." And he does the same thing. There's so many things. He's 20 years younger than me and hasn't been doing it as long. That's the part that pisses me off, because he's so much better at this than me. And I've been doing this for over 40
Is that because he
years.
wants it more, or is that because he
No,
was?
he's just really good.
Yeah.
And he's anal as shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
And wait, how did you guys get to be friends, you and Max?
Just it shows.
That's an
it was
interesting
funny.
relationship.
Yes, it's funny. Years and years ago, we met at a show, and we sort of knew of each other, and each other's work. And he didn't want to talk to me. I didn't want to talk to him. Like, because he's a good-looking guy, jock, and I'm like, this fucking douchebag. and he's like, he thought I was the world's oldest hipster. He's like, I always thought you were. We're very honest with each other. He's like, then I worked out it's all the hipsters are trying to be like you, because I don't give a shit. He's like, yeah, the stocking cap, and like, no, I just always wear a stocking cap. It's my security blanket.
Mhm.
It's like it's a weird thing. It's like I feel naked without it.
I know, I bet you there's a baby picture of you somewhere wearing it.
It's like I've got on and off, and it's like, yeah, I've got like 20 or 30 of them.
Yeah.
Is there a certain brand you like?
These ones, I found these ones I really like, and it's like I order them like 5 at a time. Like when I go somewhere, like I always have 1 or 2 in case I lose.
You change colors for holidays?
No.
Do you wear
No,
anything
and
other than?
you know anything about me? It's like basic black is no printed.
Because you can go
I
to
wouldn't even
lunch
wear-
and dinner without looking like too much of a shitbag.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I got gray work pants the other day as a gift. 3 days later, I'm like,
Yeah.
damn it, I can't wear these anywhere.
All dirty.
Well, I've
Yeah,
got,
if it's
like,
black,
in
it'd
my,
just be like-
my closet, I got all my t-shirts, and then on this level, it's work t-shirts, welding holes all over them,
Mhm.
welding pants with rips and tears, and
Yeah.
clean black t-shirts with no holes.
No.
Yeah.
And then slowly, the nice ones get moved down, and just
Yeah,
have a rotation.
the cycle.
It's
Do you
like,
have-
Do you ever change clothes? Yes. All my clothes are the same though.
Do you have a white shirt
Maybe. I don't know.
for like going out?
I get
or-
I wear wife beaters sometimes. I like wife beaters.
Sure.
Yeah, but more just around the house.
Yeah.
Or an undershirt. It's like, no, having working in a dirty business, I think it just got the point. It's like,
Yeah.
doesn't show.
You shoot your clothes are a tool as well. It's not.
Right. And I don't, like, I'll wear, the funny thing is I never wear my own shop shirts.
Sure.
Because that feels to me narcissistic.
Right.
But I'll wear like a Mama Tribe shirt, or Haas Motor Museum, or Miller gives me a lot of t-shirts.
Okay.
And
I was gonna say, I don't know if I've ever seen you in a logo T-shirt.
usually at the shop, Miller, they look after me, and it's great because it saves me a lot of money. They'll just send me a box of a dozen or
Yeah.
whatever, and it just got the little Miller. I like it because it's just
Small, yeah.
and it's like, or Motorguzzi, you know what I mean, or like
Yeah.
support your friend's business,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And it's just, I think there's part of me, I know it might be hard to believe, I like to be unobtrusive, and
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Just
Fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I'm a socialist. And like not in the, Russian.
Yeah.
The true.
Yeah.
So I like everything. I like everything the same. I like standard. It's just something that I think we're all equal. I got raised with. My dad always said it's like we're all the same. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. But the important part is like nobody's better than you. Like
Right.
you're not better than anyone else either. And I was raised with that.
Sure.
And I had just the equality. And it probably gets back to why did I help you? It's like, well, I don't know. I just have this. Maybe it's naivety, but you would help me.
Yeah.
And it's like we all just help each other, and especially in this industry, and that's why I get annoyed with a lot of people in this industry because a lot of people have this delusion that this is like the movie industry or the music industry.
Right.
Cutthroat.
It's like, no, it's a tiny little industry.
Tiny.
And we better look after each other.
Absolutely.
And support each other. Nobody's. The same. It gets back to the. Oh, I didn't know you were a Harley guy. No, I'm a motorcycle guy. And it's like.
Yeah. I was
Small.
raised in my dad is very territorial
Right.
and I could never understand why, right? Maybe it's just the way he was raised or
Right.
because having a small business like that in town, it only makes sense to work together to help each other,
Right.
but it always made it adversarial, and I
Right.
didn't.
So your
I-
dad had because I had a shop in Grays Lake, and he thought I might have been.
Yeah,
And like, no, I'm doing something completely.
and I kept trying to
different.
understand why, because I went to college and then came back and worked for my dad, and the first thing I did was go to all the shops
Right.
and introduce myself and try to break that down. I don't know why I did that, but that felt
Yeah. no,
normal
I-
to me.
It's interesting, talking about Max earlier. It's like because my kids are grown now. I'm divorced, and I love living in the Midwest, but I'm just tired of the climate. I'm tired of the winters. And I'm like, oh, I should move here. Max, hey, why don't you move to LA? He was from New York, and he's like, I love it out here. He surfs. I can get up in the morning, go surfing. I ride my bike around. I can do this. And he's like, come out here. It's like, I help you get set up. And it's like, we kind of do the same thing in a way. And it's like, he's not threatened. I'm not threatened. Like,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
work together.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's why, I have friends like that, like you. We just want to help each other, and not just because it's good for the industry, which it is, but just help each other.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just-
There's
it's
too
just
many.
a basic concept.
It's. I think one of the things is it's really easy to be negative and fall into that. It's way harder to help and be positive and try to.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, especially with social media, because when I started doing this, building bikes, it was you'd write a letter or something. There was no internet. You didn't email the magazine. You needed contact. You spoke.
Way more
Would you like
personal.
to
You needed to know somebody.
Right. Can you want to do a feature on my bike? And then, the guy would come out and shoot, film. And then, 6 months later, maybe a year later, your bike was in a magazine.
Yeah.
It's long gone, sort of thing. And now it's so easy to do this. But I always look at this, probably like any business, but it's kind of like the music industry. And there's two kinds of people. There's musicians and artists, and there's posers. And, someone just wants to be a rock star, or do you want to be an artist and a musician?
Yeah.
And there's a difference. It's the same as the motorcycle because of internet. Do you want to be Instagram famous or be a rock star, or do you just want to actually build the shit?
Mhm.
Right.
I'd rather just build the shit and use social media, which is free, as a way to put my work out there to get more work. That's it. I don't, I've never had any desire to be famous or anything. I'd like my work to be well known. That's a whole different thing.
Right.
And I think that's what's happened because of social media, not just in the motorcycle industry, but a lot of industries where it's like, you measure on how many likes you get or how many followers you have. And
No, everybody looks to see it's like a fly to light. You automatically assume that if you have a lot of followers and then you have a lot of friends and then you have a lot of money and you're really happy, and that usually isn't the case at all. And it's like, but it's again, it kind of falls back to being, it's way easier to
Right.
think of it that way than to actually work
Right.
for it and
Yep.
go for it. But
completely agree.
you won't start to learn that until you're older and you've been through some shit and you
Right.
you know how it works. So like my kid's not going to listen to me
Right.
He's gonna listen and it'll stick in there, but like it's gonna take some
He's
time to
not going to
figure
hear
it out.
until he's in his 30s or 40s.
Yeah, same thing as I'm doing now. I try to look back on people and things and relationships and things that have impacted me and why I am the way I am.
I just remember my dad saying when I was a kid, like, one day you're going to have kids. You'll understand why I'm like
I remember
this.
I remember
like,
the
no, bullshit. No, my kids are going to be different.
the first
My
time
kids are just like me.
we went to, my kids were probably 1 and 5, and we took them to the local amusement park ride thing, summertime deal, and fuck, it was a nightmare. And just I got in the car after everything was done, everybody's quiet. I called my parents and said, I'm sorry. I said, I understand now. I
It's
get it.
awesome that you did that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, because
I talk to my mum
Jesus.
now a lot. You know, my parents are still together 67 years and still alive. I'm very fortunate. I'm 60 years old and I still have both parents. They're still married. That's pretty unique.
Super unique.
And it's cool. And I have a great relationship with both my parents. I love them to death. And I talk to unfortunately, my father's deaf now, so I can't talk to him on the phone. It's kind of sad. But I talk to my mum. My mum, she's a talker like me. And my mum was just, I'm sorry, I was such a terrible mother who was always yelling at you and your sisters. And like, if I was my parent, I would have killed me. I'm like, you guys went pretty easy on me. Oh no, I'm like, Mom, no, you were. But isn't it great?
That's great.
Yeah, the full
80-year-old
circle.
woman, she's like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. For what? I'm not.
Yeah.
Not one bit. You know? I sat on the phone and talked to my mother for 2.5 hours. We just talk about all kinds of stuff.
That's great.
It's she said
Gotta
it might
be
sound
a
weird.
good
She's
time.
one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And my dad too. And you got the same thing. Like, I know your dad well.
Mhm.
And it's like you got the same thing.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, I
it's
see
pretty
the
cool.
old guy. I see him once a week. He's working for me in the shop a little bit here and there, and it's nice to have him around. It's we need to work on our communication skills and like he's a super emotional. Like you can't breach sensitive subjects with the guy because
He's old school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I got a lot of that too. So I feel like I'm a couple notches above him, but like it's important to be able to chat about things like that, even though it's super difficult. And
It's funny, a few years, because I know your dad well, and a year or two ago, maybe 3 years ago, I was at your dad's shop, because he's got a time machine, so I go, hey, see, you can take these tires off. Hey, it's from a couple, whatever, he's always good.
yeah,
And I'm sure I told him, hey, you ever need anything welded, whatever, we'll just help each other out.
yeah,
No problem. I just make conversation, I'm like, you must be really proud of you. Yeah. And he's like, he's playing it down, but you could hear it's like, he's so fucking proud of you.
Yeah,
Oh.
And it's
yeah.
like, and I'm sure you know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but it was like,
That's
I kind
great.
of said it. I was kind of needling because I know what he's like. Must be really proud. Too. He's like, he didn't know how to react.
Sure.
It was great.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
He's such a good guy. And your mom's awesome.
Yeah.
And I like their relationship. You see them together.
Yeah, I mean it's
It's
symbiotic. Like without her, he's nothing, and
Right.
likewise, right? Like she's the type of person that has to have someone to take care of, right? Like
Right.
however she was raised, that's where she ended
Yeah.
up. So, they just fill a hole or a void for each
Yeah.
other, and take the good with the bad because it's
Right.
never roses all the time.
Yeah, it's they're cool people.
Mhm.
You turned out all right, I guess. I'm gonna go see your dad soon and tell him again.
Yeah.
Must be really proud. I'm just gonna fuck with him. I'm gonna make him cry.
Yeah, he will. He will. I think when he first meets Alice Cooper, he's gonna bawl like a baby.
What's that?
When he meets Alice Cooper, I think he's gonna bawl like a baby.
That's his idol. That's great.
Yeah.
Do you know Alice Cooper's real name?
No.
Vincent Furnier. He was a school teacher from Detroit. He was from Detroit. I think he was a school teacher.
So cool.
Very intelligent guy. What I've read about him.
Oh,
I saw him
clearly.
live
Yes.
in Melbourne in maybe late '80s, early '90s. It was awesome. It
The
was
best
so
live
good.
concert I've ever
Oh
seen.
God, it was. I went to that. I saw the Clash in Melbourne in '80, '81. That's the best live show I've ever seen. Then the Sex Pistols was pretty good.
Oh wow.
I saw them in Aragon in Chicago in the '90s. And it was like, well, it's not the original Sex Pistols. Yeah, it was Glenn Matlock. Sid Vicious wasn't the bass player. It was with Glenn Matlock, the original bass player, who wrote a lot of those songs. And it's funny, it's like, people's idea of punk, because punk was not a music genre. It was an attitude towards not just music, but life. And it was rebel with a cause sort of thing. And like, not fuck you in a bad way.
Right.
And it was the whole thing. You think about this, how much like a band like the Sex Pistols changed music. One album.
Yeah.
Never mind the bollocks, basically. One album. Just those songs. And it's like, I can still listen to it now. I mean, we're from the same, it's like, it's such good shit.
As soon as you put the needle down, it's
Honest.
like,
It's like,
Yeah,
and they
woke
always
up-
played up they can't really play. They could play.
could
Like,
play.
they were good.
Yeah.
And they were tight.
Yeah.
They were,
they were really
It
good.
woke up a generation.
oh yeah, it did.
Mhm.
That's the thing, it's like, with music, rock and roll music, like 1955 it was rock and roll music. And then it got watered down and shit. Then it was punk rock. And then, probably by the late 80s, I think rap was the only thing. And there hasn't been anything since.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just, like punk rock basically just, because original rock was just basically the voice of youthful rebellion.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it was. That's what punk rock was. And
Yeah.
then, but, record companies realized there was money in it. If you think about the whole story with the Sex Pistols, like, because they went on live television on the Red Grundy show and said fuck, and like EMI, like the record company like keep the money, we don't want to deal with it. And they went to like A&M or something, did the same thing, like keep the money. And then there's a guy owned a little music store in London, Richard Branson. Yeah, he had a little record label. Like, Richard Branson's wealth basically came from the Sex Pistols.
Oh, really?
Wow.
I didn't know
It's
that.
like, yeah, he owned this little shop in London, Virgin Records, and he had a little independent record label. Because independent record labels, that was a new thing.
Yeah.
When I was in punk band in the 70s, we put out a single that did well, and we had to do it independently. Wasn't we had to do it in like what we did, like all the shows we played, what we got paid was never much. We'd saved all that money to buy studio time, and we found a little independent record label that pressed their single, and it was doing it yourself sort of thing, and not having to rely on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do
The-
what you want
the
and put it
industry.
out without the record company say,
Yeah.
we can't make
As a
money off that.
gatekeeper, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, or you get buried somewhere and
Right. And of course now it's changed so much, because when it was vinyl, then it went to CDs, and then now it's online, and it's like it's a whole different industry.
Yeah.
And it's like everything's download. And
Yeah.
I finally just started downloading music like 3 weeks ago. Like someone was in my car a while ago. You're listening to a CD? Yeah. Yeah, I can plug my phone. Oh. I'm like, no, I got a CD. It's cool. It's a cassette player and a CD player and a radio. He's like, I'm styling.
yeah.
And then my son, the other day, he was driving me somewhere. And I'm like, what the hell is this charger you got? It's like the plugs in the cigarette lighter. And he's got an earlier Toyota. He's like, oh, that's so you can Bluetooth your phone to the stereo, because it's an older stereo. Bluetooth. I'm like, what? No. Have you seen these things? It's like,
Yeah.
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 I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I never seen such a thing.
Well,
It's awesome. I'm
There's
like,
the-
how does it get through the cigarette lighter into the stereo? Tell me that.
it's magic.
Because I'm like, now I think of it like analog.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
make it work. Prove me this doesn't work. Like I said, you learn from your kids.
That's right. That's right.
So,
Yeah, any way necessary.
yeah.
Whoever, wherever, whenever,
Right.
however.
Well, now I'm really excited. It's my next major purchase is going to be one of these
Sure.
plug-in things.
You research, or you're just gonna blind faith buy one?
Oh no, I'll ask my son. I'll probably give him some money. Here's how much do they cost? I don't know. How much are they? Are they expensive?
No.
$20?
Yeah.
I'll give him 25. He can keep the change. Give me one of those things. Now show
Put
me
it
how
in
to
your
use
Christmas
it.
stocking.
Yeah, exactly.
Come set it up for
He's
me,
such a
kid.
good kid. My kids are so patient with me. Like, Dad, you're an idiot. We love you though.
It's good.
Well, we went off on some tangents
Yeah.
there.
Well, it's a good place to wrap it up, I think.
I say so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for
hanging
chatting.
out.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really been awesome to catch up the last couple of days. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, look forward to
Yeah.
seeing y'all in February.
Yeah, I'm looking. Well, I'll probably see you guys before then.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay, I want to see that Ducati.
Yeah, that thing's gonna be silly.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start Googling and looking for monsters now. 90s monsters.
I know a few people who know. So yeah, I know a guy.
Okay.
We'll get you one.
All right.
This is great.
My first Italian motorcycle.
Wow.
I just started my first 37. I have a 37 big twin side valve UH,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got a Kawasaki now, and I'm going Italian next.
Around the world.
Then we'll go to Italy.
There you go.
That's
Let's
it.
do that.
You're done.
Yeah, yeah. Move it.
He's gonna shave his beard off
Yeah.
soon.
Start wearing collared shirts.
You have a safety blanket. I have mine.
Yeah, I get it. But it'll start becoming more quiet. He's going to be drinking cappuccinos and shit. Speaking Italian. Oh, piacere.
No, ask Scott how I do with foreign languages. I embarrass the shit out of him everywhere we go.
It's fine. He learns it by the day we're leaving. Well, Craig Rodsmith, it was really, really great
It's been
to talk to you.
Let's do this
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, let's do it
Yeah.
again.
Let's do it at the English wheel though, and
Yeah.
show Scott how to weld aluminum.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you
would
guys
love
should
that,
come down and
actually.
hang out in the shop.
I know you've said that,
Yeah.
and I get to take you up on that. I would just
Absolutely
really love
welcome
to
to.
just.
You know, layered mill, like machining, all kinds of. More than happy.
Cool.
And maybe we should all build something together.
That'd
Yeah.
be fun.
Just
That'd be really fun.
right, then it'd be a big deal.
Yeah.
You guys are into your flathead race bikes. Let's do some cool body work or
Yeah.
Yeah.
controls
Yeah.
or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
That'd be fun as shit.
Mm-hmm. That'd be cool.
All right. Cool. Thanks, man. Great
Thank
to
you.
talk to you.
Thanks.